in my
project.
feet.
That's,
Yeah, like quarter inch by 1 inch by 1.5 inches high here with a 1/4 inch hole in it.
Hey, Dan,
Okay?
what causes cramps in
All right.
your arch?
All right, I'm gonna turn this off, so. Bye.
Your thoughts?
You know my husband arrives at 5 o'clock after 3.5 weeks being absent.
I think it'd be cured.
Dan, that was
Cute,
classic.
cute.
Oh, boy. Sonny, how are you?
She wants to
That
know
would
the
depend
truth.
an
What can
awful
I
lot
tell
on who
you?
you ask.
Oh, is that right? Oh.
I don't know, I'm not married.
A little short. I told Charlie, I figured out at the end of the week last week, I had 90, little over
I've been
90.
cooking
Do you want to go to
That's all?
Then I do this
Colorado?
besides,
I
and
gotta ask
That's
you,
all?
are you all hip?
every
Obama's paying
weekend.
overtime?
No, but I mean, do you want to go with the
well,
sheriff,
I'm-
and the jail administrator, and
I'm pretty
myself?
sure
I do.
it won't apply to me.
To Colorado.
It's like August 18th through the
I'm trying to figure
21st.
out right now.
My birthday's the 21st.
Well, there you go.
There I go.
I've got the renewal on my.
I wonder if you get any
company
special
health
treats on an
insurance comes
airplane
up on the
when you fly on your
31st.
birthday. I
I'm trying to
do,
deal
but
with all of that, and it's not working
Well,
very good. But
I didn't go last time.
I think it's going
do
to be the
you want to go,
sheriff.
Dickie?
Cancel the
You know, and
agreement.
I asked him if we could have more people. and they said, Another commissioner if they want.
every single one, well, every one of my employees.
I hear it's really, it's like you work.
The first of the month after their employment.
I hear you work.
Well,
They give you
I'm not
problems
gonna
and you
close
got to
on-
solve them.
Just, if I know it ahead of time, I can schedule around it.
I'm not gonna start paying it on
What
the
day is it
first.
gonna be?
Thank you.
August
They gotta figure
18th
out
through
some way
Monday
to
through Friday.
prorate the shifts.
What's the,
The 21st is my birthday.
Short cherry.
Mark your
good.
calendar.
And you can get.
so you're gonna celebrate your birthday there then?
Oh, I've been 3
But I figure
years
as
to
chair
get my brother's.
of public health and safety, you are running again, so
Security disability.
I'm sorry?
you are running again, and you're the chair of public health and safety, so that would make sense.
Okay, we'll bring this meeting to order. This is Grand Terrace County Board of Commissioners special budget meeting. Today is Wednesday, the 19th. We'll have Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sarah, if we could do roll call, please.
Lathrop,
Here.
Max Bauer,
Here.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Thomas.
Yep.
Inman.
Here.
Rennie. Lemcool.
Here. Thank you very much. Seeing we have 2 people in the audience who would like to make public comment. Not. I guess we can dispense with reading the public comment rules. Next on the agenda is the budget discussion, any action items from budget review hearings. I was not able to be at the last meeting, and the reception was pretty bad, but I got somewhat of the gist of the meeting, so it was interesting discussion that you guys had. Appreciate that. So is there anybody that would like to make any recommendations as to where we'd like to go from here? Larry?
Well, I think it would be valuable, I guess from my perspective, if we could get an update from staff on item 3B first on what they see as the forecast for the remaining part of this year and for 2015 based on revenue sharing and some of the assumptions that they brought in during the last meeting to give us an idea if we're getting very close to having a break-even budget for 2015 and not spending the majority of the 2014 transfer over from the fund balance, given in 2013 we didn't spend something up to $700,000 as they're reporting us. So I think it would be good for me to get a feel for what the forecast is, and then that would give me a better feeling, and maybe perhaps us a better feeling as to how deep we need to go with some of the discussions of cutting, which the action items are in the back here. So I'd like to get that first, but.
Dan?
Now, Larry, I just want to make sure, Dave was talking about giving us a presentation on his computerized screen. Is that what you're talking about? You want to hear that first? I agree.
Dave, are you at that point where you can do so?
As you can see, we're trying to find it. And we have two things to do today, and one is to go over where we are and what we see coming forward. The second thing is to look at the action items that you talked about in your budget review hearings and just to decide whether a majority of commissioners are interested in going in that direction. I mean, some of these were thrown out and, maybe one commissioner thought it might be a good idea to look at that, and then when you actually think about it, maybe, majority commissioners say, we're probably not going to do that even if we do look at it. So I would like to know, get a majority vote on a list of projects that everyone wants us to work on. And then we can come back with all those things, get things moving, get departments working, get my staff working on developing the information and bringing forth the change. So, this is good.
I'm sorry, it'll be here in a minute.
That's okay. Well, at any rate, we have a pretty large file, and I've put together using this forecasting model that we purchased last year, and we've got basically a forecast set up for 3 years. And I also have, I'm going to hand this out today. This is just an example, I guess, until we basically decide that this is the version that we are going to work with. I don't know how many.
I don't know what it's called. Should be in there.
Thank you.
Should be under date modified. This isn't final by any means. There are 4 basic spreadsheets on our budget, and the big 2 and at the beginning of the budget are the general fund revenues and general fund expenditures summarized by department, and for the revenues summarized by source. And I have this lovely spreadsheet here that I'm going to try and make fit to size so that we can see what's going on. It's not real. Let's see if this works. Okay. You can't see those numbers up there, and I can pass this out later, but I have a number of things on the left of this spreadsheet. And what you're looking at right now is what those black bars, just to give you a general idea, that's what our budget kind of looks like from 2012 on the left to 2016 on the right, using forecasting projections of not a lot of inflationary increases in our revenue, and going line by line through our budget and trying to figure out what makes sense if we were to see inflationary increases in some things and not in others. We just made general assumptions about our increases, but they are consistent with the way we would do a budget normally.
What years are we looking at from
We're
left
looking
to
at
right?
2012 through 2016. 12,
So which one's
13,
12?
14's
On the
in the
far
middle.
right?
16 is on the end.
16's on the end?
16's on the far right.
How can
On the far
16 be smaller when you're saying
You're looking at
40 million here?
You're looking at a fund balance projection.
Oh, well, we're looking at a,
Yeah, the dollar on here is 40,016,166.
Okay, so the black squares are predicting fund balance. You said that's going to
that's
shrink.
just fund balance.
Let me pop this up so you.
hand those out?
Dave, that's without a new jail, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
In fact, no, that's without any assumptions about new things that we might have happening. Looking at the numbers of, the revenues and expenditures, they're consistent
No, it does
with
not
what you
include the
have in
jail.
the handout that I just gave you, except some of the things that we're going to talk about here. I've got several, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think 9 items here. One of them is revenue sharing, and if I click the revenue sharing thing, you'll notice that nothing changes. And that is because right now we have full funding for revenue sharing because our county taxpayers are giving us our revenue sharing payments. If we don't get full funding, bad things start to happen. We've got if revenue sharing drops off, for example, if it were to be eliminated, it would look like this. And we went back to our chart, and you'd see that our fund balance would start to drop precipitously as we aren't getting $1,679,000 in continuing revenue sharing beginning in 2015. I'm going to go back and uncheck that because we expect right now that we are going to receive full funding for revenue sharing. There's been a proposal introduced to spread the money a different way. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but the governor has proposed full funding for revenue sharing, so clicking that box today means we're going to have status quo, we're going to continue to get that money. We have, last year in our budget process, when we talk about $1 million structural deficit, $700,000 of that loss or that structural deficit is the loss of revenue sharing next year, is the things going the way they were going with no governor stepping up and saying he's going to fully fund it, because nobody could have anticipated that. So far, since they put us on our own money back in 2005, they have cut it every year except for one since then. So who would have thought that they'd actually propose to put it back to full funding? So another thing that we may have happen is some wage and benefit changes. That'll improve you'll notice that when I click on that, it improves our fund balance projection a bit. And that's because, as you'll recall, we had about $900,000 in net savings from countywide implementation of several wage and benefit changes that occurred last year. A change from in the defined contribution match for new hires from 9% of payroll down to 6% of payroll, a change in our health insurance for higher premiums and deductibles, and there was a wage and fringe increase of 1.5%, but the net was about $900,000 if it was implemented with all county employees. About half of our county employees implemented it at the end of last year. We still have to go into negotiations with the remaining. If that were successful and we were to get those changes, that's the result that we'd see.
Can you help us with this? As you're making these discussion changes and we're just seeing the differences in the fund balance, can you let us know that that is a result of a shortfall in the operating budget, which you're assuming you're pulling out of the fund balance of a certain amount? Is that how you're doing it? So
if I uncheck these boxes,
as you go along, can you tell us, as you're starting it and then going through your budget, as you're going along showing us this fund balancing, can you show us, okay, at this point you would be X amount short in your operating budget, that would take out of your fund balance?
Sure.
So then we can get an idea at the end of your presentation with all your assumptions, is there a break-even point based on certain assumptions?
Really a great way to do this, because there's just not enough real estate on this screen.
Yeah, we can't see the numbers.
But if we zoom in on this number right here at the top, this 2014, 2015, I don't know if you can see it yet. You see it? Are you seeing these numbers yet? There's that $1,035,000 is right there. If I can zoom in a little closer. Sorry. This is just
We're
too...
old, Dave.
I know.
Our eyesight isn't what it used to be.
I know.
Dave, I think the one thing that concerns me a little bit, when we talk about the fact about the healthcare changes, or health insurance changes and things that we made in 2013 going into the 2014, if those are implemented countywide, I think the piece, if I remember right, is those people that negotiated that for 2014, that's only a one-year contract.
That's correct.
So we can assume that that is what we're going to move forward to through 2015, 2016, but we have to go back to every single county employee or every single bargaining unit and reaffirm what they took accepted for 2014 and try to move forward with that same proposal to the other half of the employees for 2015-16. But as of the end of 2014, we don't have the commitment for one single bargaining unit to retain those benefit packages.
Well, that's correct.
You know, that's, the
Yeah,
one thing we have to remember
2015 is a
that
new contract
when we
year.
negotiated those were one-year contracts, and, and I think you guys did a great job with that, and I appreciate the fact that the employees came to the table. But we cannot forget that we've got half of them onto that, but we're not guaranteed that they're going to stay in 2015-16.
Charlie?
I agree with Sonny entirely. We have to renegotiate this whole thing again. You can't assume a savings on something that's going to be renegotiated. We could go back the other way in those negotiations.
Well, that's true.
You know, you're assuming, we're all hoping, Sonny, I agree with that. But you still have to negotiate with the other half, period, and you have to negotiate with the people that took a change in plan this year.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's everybody.
Yeah, I mean, and
So I don't know
if you
how you can
recall,
say that we can assume we're going to have that money.
well, if you recall, we didn't actually, we weren't looking at benefit concessions. We were actually trying to break even on our health insurance cost. Those changes really got us to about a 1% increase in our health insurance, down from a 22% increase in our health insurance. So, yeah, we could get our projections for next year, and it'd be great if they went down. But we will have to negotiate with every single employee group next year. And right now, half of our employees have a benefit package that's different and lower, lower level of benefits. They pay higher copays and deductibles, and they have co-insurance now. What I'm saying here is these are assumptions that we would put, going forward. They just show an effect. And the question is, as you go forward into 2015 and 2016, you have to make assumptions about what you think is going to happen. And I'm making the assumption that one way or the other, we're going to have to reduce something by about $250,000 in the wage and benefit area, or we're going to have to find $500,000 somewhere else to keep our budget in line, because that 22% increase didn't go away. It's still there.
So you assume that savings will come out of the health care adjustment?
Well, the health care went down as a result for the employees we negotiated with last year, and saved us about $450,000 net. With all those benefit changes plus the wage increase netted out to about a $450,000 savings. We'd have to get it with the other half to get the other $450,000, and that would take care of our, what was $850,000 in health care alone.
Correct.
Dan?
When I look at this, it goes out like 3 years, right, and we see, or maybe 3 years, because 13 already happened. So those little squares up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you look at that, and you're seeing that your fund balance, even best case scenario, shrinks. So I'm assuming that the money we bring in is not paying for our services. We're using our fund balance to pay for our services. If you took that same chart and extended it out another 3 years, we might have a fund balance this big. So we're really spending more money than we're bringing in if we're using our fund balance. Am I right?
The question is, what are the assumptions?
What
that we
what
can do
assumptions
this?
you're going to make going
Even your
forward?
best case assumptions. Even your best case
I'm
assumptions.
not done yet.
Oh, no, best case assumptions. is-
I've got 9 things on
He's
this
got 9
list.
more things.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm looking at that. I see this.
Yeah.
Okay. I get
Yeah,
it.
we got 9 more things.
I've got 9 more
Okay,
things
no,
on
no.
this list. Okay, so
Just a second.
No, it's
Chris?
I was just going to say what Dave said.
Okay.
We have to make some type of assumptions if we're
Okay.
going to do a multi-year budget.
All right.
That's all.
Okay.
But thank
And that's
you.
what I'm going over, is that, in 2015, going into 2015 and 2016, we've got to make some kind of assumptions. Right now, if you look at our fund balance chart, you can see that it drops, 2014's in the middle, then it drops by about $1 million, that's what that means, and then it drops $1 million in 2016 as well. That's where we are today, and that's the budget we adopted. No surprises. if revenue sharing stays where it is, it doesn't get worse. If revenue sharing doesn't get passed the way the governor's proposed it, it will get worse. But right now, we're assuming that the way the governor's got it in the budget will stay that way. And I've heard that it might have a good chance. And we also said wage and benefit assumptions, which is a big one. That helps us quite a bit. And our number changes from 1,061,000 to 735 and 763 in 2015. Now we're at a $700,000 structural deficit. If that comes to pass, if we can negotiate that successfully or get those funds out of somewhere, we've got 750,000 to go. Retirement is the other biggie. Retirement, as you know, everybody had a real good year in the investment field. We had $41 million in our retirement fund for our defined benefit plan. If that earned 25% last year, which we are expecting that it did at least that well, that means we got added another $10 million to our retirement fund. They smooth it out over 10 years, so that's $1 million for every year that might be benefit for us. If it goes up by $250,000 because we got to pay double and they've got an accelerated plan going, but it drops by $1 million, that's about 700 to 750,000 that we might see as a positive next year. That's huge. So if we get that. Now, it looks like the whole chart went down, but actually the scale went up, so it looks like but you just have to look at the relationship between the bars. And we're down to about 135,000 and 163,000 in our structural deficit.
Wow.
That's a big change.
Let us
If
know.
that happens next year, and we suspect that it might be that good.
And we can't forget that even though we budgeted $625,000 of fund balance in 2013, we in fact brought back $714,000 that we did not expend out of that budget. So we got a swing of $1.3 million in the 2013 fund balance that we hadn't anticipated.
Well, that's what's going
So-
on in this chart. I mean, you can see that.
But even at this chart, you're still using all the money that you budget, and if we don't in fact expend 100% of our budget, that, $150,000, $130,000, we will grow the fund balance in next year if that in fact happens.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't spend that money, that 625,000 starts to even our chart out. If we actually don't spend the 625, and that's what I've got in the one I just clicked on. We've got the 911 surcharge, I'm gonna add that. That makes it look better. The personal property tax, if we get held harmless for that, that makes it look better. TIF 2 in 2016,
The what?
TIF 2.
Oh, TIF 2.
If the city does not renew that.
Yeah, if they don't renew that and that goes back on the tax rolls, that's a little bump for us. If Register of Deeds revenue improves due to the economy, I mean, things can start looking pretty good. We're looking at having $923,000, our revenues in excess of our expenditures. If all that comes to pass. Those are all pretty rosy predictions. Of course, now you could add a new jail too.
And there goes
Whoops.
your $1 million debt service.
We don't have that money yet. And that puts us back at a $12.2 million deficit in 2016. Because, I mean, we just don't have $2 million set aside yet. We don't have any plan for setting aside that money yet. But what I'm trying to say to you is that there are a few of these things on this list that are big things, especially the retirement, the wage and benefit negotiations, and the revenue sharing. All three of those are big ticket items that look like they might go in our favor. And if they do, and we should know by mid-year, we might have solved our structural deficit just because the world got better for us.
I'm glad to see you throw the new jail in there. That's cool. That'd be at the $1.6 million a
Correct.
year. Okay, and what about capital improvements? Are we, in this budget, are we really funding capital improvements the way we should?
No, not yet.
And what should that really be? I mean, what if you threw that in there?
That's going to add a couple $100,000 to our problem.
Okay, $200K.
Per year.
per year.
per year. Is
Every
there any other thing that and I don't mean to, I'm not saying this in any derogatory way, I'm not eloquent enough to say it any better, that we're sticking our heads in the sand about. Capital improvements, we kind of are, and how about 911, the improvements they need?
Well, you know, they need $1 million in equipment, but how, you know, quick can you buy all that?
I don't know, but
But we need to start
still-
setting aside money to do that.
Yeah, and so those things are not in your budget, but they still are in our minds. And I think we should think about those things.
Well, let's take the 911 surcharge out of there. Now, and let's take the jail out for now. If we take the 911 surcharge out of there and let them use that new money,
Yes.
don't call it keep it revenue expense neutral. They're gonna get $219,000 next year, you know, new, and we're gonna let them have it
But
to buy equipment with.
We fund them at $700,000 a year.
Yeah.
So if we give them the $200,000, we still got to come up with, well, I could math, $500,000 for them, and we still have to fund them.
We're still gonna need some money.
And of course, and their equipment's becoming antiquated. I'm just saying that I think at this point, we should think about capital improvements really being funded the way they should be funded, the jail really being funded the way it should be funded, and 911 being funded the way it really be funded. So we have a real picture of what's ahead of us. Because if you look at this, oh, good, we don't have to make any changes. I still think we have cuts to make.
I think that the beauty of this allows you to start making quality decisions when somebody comes in and says, I need 100,000 for this, or I need 25,000 for this, or I need 50,000 for that. And you can start looking back and saying, well, you know, if we make that decision, then we have to make another decision on the other side that says, when you do that, you have to cut something else in order to build a fund for that purpose. That's the beauty of this kind of thing. So your discussions start to change with this kind of information. So when you are making those decisions, as you're going through the year, and future commissions, as they're going through it, this kind of information really leads that discussion and helps you with that discussion a whole lot better. You know, as far as cuts in our thing, in what we've done, you know, I think it's really important that we've gone through, we've seen a lot of departments, we've seen a lot of things, you know, as to how do we want to go forward on this. And, you know, we've got the hearing notes that we put in. You guys had a good discussion on that. I think the staff has gotten, you know, we have to compliment the staff because they really have done our job for us by doing the cuts that they did in 2013. They took the decision away from us by doing what we wanted them to do, which is fabulous. And I think and if we continue with that, we continue holding their hand to the fire or asking them to continue to be part of this process so that they can continue to find those ways to be able to cut, we aren't going to have to make those hard, fast decisions to be able to make those cuts. We can tell staff, you've seen what we've done, we've seen all the different reports, we've seen all the kind of stuff. Is there anything in those reports that stand out that you want to direct staff to be responsible for? I think that's where we want to go. We've got the budgets, we've got this kind of what the revenue projections are. Dave gave us some direction when he first gave us the budget review for 2014. Do we want to accept some of those? Some of those have already been implemented. Some of them are a little bit harder for us to swallow. And, you know, and I'm going to pick on the sheriff, that, you know, Dave's comment to begin with, that we should be cutting a number of deputies out, and then we were asked by the sheriff to increase 4 deputies. So we went against his recommendation by that motion. We're not looking at the budget when we make those decisions, and we need to do that. We need to be very cognizant. We cannot take our foot off the gas pedal because we got to keep it going forward. Chris?
I agree with Dr. Lathrop. Let's be honest. At some point, we need a new jail. Those of us who believe a millage is going to pass for a new jail when we cannot pass a millage for a school building, raise your hand. Consequently, if we are going to move ahead with a new jail, we've got to start making some cuts now. I tend to disagree with you a little bit, Mr. Chairman, in that I believe that it is our job, we were elected to make these decisions. I don't think we should constantly go to staff and say, cut here, cut here, cut here, cut here. At some point, we have to prioritize what we are willing to spend money on, and at some point, we have got to set money aside for capital improvements, which we have let go year after year after year. You know, Danny Brown could come in here yet this afternoon, and I bet if we told him we had $1 million that we'd write him a check for this afternoon, I bet he'd be here in about 10 or 15 minutes. But we have got to keep up roof repairs, ceilings leak.
Roofs, parking lots.
Yeah, parking lots, potholes. These things have got to be attended to. And in order for us to attend to them, we are going to have to make some difficult decisions. And that means, in my mind, we cannot continue to move forward with the same budget that we have had in the past. Now, if we are not going to build a new jail, then we're not going to build a new jail. But if we do build a new jail, if we move forward in that process, do we build it where it is, or do we build it off-site? If we build it where it is, we've got to put money aside to house our inmates somewhere else while the new jail is built where the present one is. Or we have to acquire land, or decide we're going to put it on something that we already own. I mean, we've got expenses ahead of us. And consequently, I think we need to start trimming, and we need to start doing it sooner rather than later. And we need, I'll hush now.
Charlie?
I think we're a little ahead trying to figure out where the jail should be. First, we got to decide if we're going to do it. Other than that, when I looked through this whole thing, we had some trouble with our retiree obligations and things like that. I think a lot of that was market-driven. Unconscionable that these capital funds were depleted. That's where management failed this community and the citizens of this county. Chris, everyone makes a great point. We got to get on this capital stuff because it's the people's assets. We got to take care of them.
Just a
Well,
clarification, if I could. It was the County Board of Commissioners over the last 6 years that decided to wind down. We also spent improvements every year on capital improvements for the facilities and other items that we agreed to pay on. But it was the Board of Commissioners, not management or staff or the administrator, that decided to wind down the capital improvement fund in hopes, again, it was back in hope back then, at every election cycle, that the economy and the turnaround of the tax revenue would hopefully be shifting neutral and then beginning to go upward, and then we can build it back up in the following election cycle. So it was a conscious decision on the Board of Commissioners, not like the administrator or management that made that wind-down decision. So,
Yeah, Sonny?
Well, I think when we talk about the capital improvement, should we do more? Could we do more? Absolutely. But I think the assumption that we haven't done anything is false also. When I think back of it, since I've sat on this county board, we've built a new airport, we've acquired property and put in a public services building, we've built a law enforcement center, we've built a completely new district courthouse, we've renovated the historic courthouse, and we've built a new health department building. All of that was done without one additional cent in tax money that was levied on the taxpayers of this community. So to sit here and say that we haven't done any capital improvement is bull. It just is. We've done an awful lot of stuff. You know, when we look at the 5-year capital improvement plan that Danny Brown has, you know, we are at the point where we've got some things to come up. But, you know, we repaired the roof on this building. We've put roofs at Twin Lakes. You know, I'm trying to think of what other major type construction, you know. I remember when we had the work done on the masonry panels on the outside of this building. It was a huge expenditure, and it was something that none of us foreseen happening, but we made it happen because it needed to be done. You know, and when you make the comments that we haven't taken care of capital improvement, I think that's false, because we absolutely have been keeping up with what needed to be done. Sure, can we do more? Absolutely. You know, I have capital improvements in my home I should probably take care of better than I do too. But the fact is, we've really done a pretty good job of keeping up the taxpayers' interest and protecting the taxpayers' interest in these buildings. You know, we are at a point now where we need to make some very specific decisions. You know, and if you look at the long-term plan, you know, like I said, we've taken care of the public services need. We've taken care of the law enforcement need. You know, whether the Woodmere facility, as we all know, was purchased as a temporary facility. You know, we are at the point where the contract with the city over the Front Street buildings and Woodmere building, that all expires at the end of this year. So, you know, we're at a point now we can make a decision about where to go with that operation. The completely new district court building, the renovation of the historic court building, those were huge ticket items, all of which happened without any additional tax money. We had a terribly deficient operation with the health department. We built a beautiful new facility that's meeting the needs of this community and will continue to meet the needs of this community long into the future. The next item on that list, whether you look at the list for today or if you looked at the list from 10 years ago, the next item is the jail. We are there. And it's time to build the new jail.
Charlie?
Yeah, getting back to that, I did not mean management, I meant this board.
There you go.
Okay, Larry? I
got
stand
it.
corrected. I thought you figured out what I meant by that.
No, but
But
that's
the
okay.
point is, it's the
Yeah,
direction
we
from
did.
this board.
Yeah, we did that.
And we did some things also, and we didn't fund maybe our obligations with retirement like we maybe should have.
Right.
These were conscious decisions that came from the board.
I agree.
Sonny can say what he wants. We fixed the courthouse, the roof leaks. You need capital funds. If for no other reason, when something like a roof comes up, you have some money to draw from. You don't have to go to the general fund. We need a capital fund, and we should address that.
And I agree with that.
Thank you.
That's what I mean too, is that I do agree with you, Sonny. We've done a beautiful job. I wasn't here. You guys did. But our trusted administrator is saying that we're really not funding our capital fund the way we should. We're really not funding 911 the way we should. And I look at it like this. I was thinking about it last night. We gain almost all of our income by taxing people's homes and businesses. And if they can't pay their taxes, we take their home from them, don't we? And this means we're spending their home money. This is real serious. And I want to be real stingy and real efficient. And just because we have some rosy predictions, maybe or not, and I'm not casting aspirations anymore, even if things were doing great, if we could become more efficient and maybe give our folks a tax break, we should even do that. So it's not, oh, we can make it the next 3 years if we get this, if we get that. We should look for ways of efficiencies. I know I did it in my office, and it made a significant difference. So people do it in private businesses, we can do it. So I think when we realize this money is home money from our citizens, and really the ideal thing would be to give them a tax break if we could, and plus also do the things they need.
Dick?
The biggest problem there is most of that home money goes to the schools, not to us.
Yeah, very little.
Well, okay, but still, we have our part of
Well,
it.
we got our
responsibility.
part of it, but it's
Yeah.
only a fraction of what the total is.
Yeah, it's
Portion
never
of the
been
tax
raised.
bill that actually comes to the county for operations. There's this huge thing about people talk about how much taxes they pay. the portion that Grand Traverse County gets is so minor in regard to their entire tax bill, it doesn't matter.
But we should still be a good steward of this money.
And I'm not sure that we're
I
not.
think we are.
And when I opened this budget meeting last week, Herb wasn't here, when I opened this, the first thing I asked you is after we did this meeting with all of the different departments, where there's anything in those meetings that anyone identified that we shouldn't be doing, and we can cut that out immediately. And I didn't get any response from anyone that they identified through this process something that we shouldn't be doing.
Well,
I
there's
have
about 15 things on that list.
I have a question, Dave, on when, in 2013, the budget has reduced, the employees have reduced the amount of money that they spent. Did you take into consideration when you did this, those cuts that have already been implemented?
Yes. The, whatever was implemented in 2013, a lot of that was salary attrition, and just generally keeping their budgets low. When I looked at all the departments, there wasn't any one area that stuck out as, they saved a ton here. It was fairly evenly distributed across the board. In every department, you got $39 million budget, everybody saves, 5%. I mean, you've got a lot of money sitting there. We budget that $625,000, thinking, if we don't have a lot of turnover, that's about what we're going to save just in the salary attrition alone. Maybe we should kick that number up, as maybe our demographics have changed, but it's taken into account. That's why 2013 went up, and went up precipitously. It went up very nicely. And if you look at all these rosy things that may or may not come to pass. I mean, the revenue sharing might not come to pass. That's a big thing. If that doesn't come to pass, that we're right back in the shape we were in at the end of last year. And the same thing with the retirement. We know that that's going to improve. What it does to our actuarially required contribution, I'm not sure until we see the actuarial plan.
When will that happen?
I'm sorry?
When do you think that might happen?
July, maybe?
July or August?
No, should have that May, early June.
Actuary?
Yeah, yes, the annual valuation.
Yeah, MERS has gotten a lot better about getting them out. Used to get them out late in the year, so you didn't know what was going on until you were just about to adopt your budget. Now, they're getting it out sooner. But those things, if you add all these things together, without the new jail, I mean, you start to come to the point where you've freed up enough resources. Because, instead of going down, taxes are going up. And instead of, losing revenue sharing again, we're actually getting a big bump in revenue sharing. Retirement's going down, not up. I've got an 8% increase in health insurance for next year and the following year. In fact, every year going forward. I don't know if that's going to come to pass, if it's going to be more than that or less than that, but you have to assume something. So I'm assuming 8%. But what I'm trying to say to you is, right now, with the revenue sharing on the table the way it is, with the wage and benefit assumptions that we have, put into place last year, and the retirement changes that I think are going to be affected due to the investment income that we received last year, it's worth waiting until June or July to start thinking that we don't have any money or we're in trouble. And to build a building, or to get your capital improvements in shape, or to do anything that needs to, you need to grow an area of your budget, takes time. You need to think about taking the long view on what you're doing, because this is a ship that lasts back 150 plus years, and it takes a long time to turn it. Each commission has looked at their services and said, well, do we need to do this? Do we need to do that? And the department heads come in and say, I need this, and they're questioned and grilled every time. And it's been going on for a long time. That's why it was no surprise that when they came in and you grilled them again, they went, we are using all that money for good things. And you said, yeah, I guess you are. What are we going to cut? You might be able to find a way to save a few dollars here and there, and that's good. You got a list here, and I want you to go through it. And if we can do it, we can do it. If we're going to save money, let's save money. Great. But the long term, to get $1.6 million in the budget for the jail, we have to just decide that that's a priority. When I put the budget together, I'm going to look for a way to put aside, and this is what I did in Midland, and I built a Clinton County courthouse. That's exactly how I started. Put $500,000 aside. I found we had sold some property, that goes in that pot. Put that $500,000 in there to get the process started. Did the same thing in Midland. We had a, one-time, revenue, put it over here. Something else happened, we put it over there. And we start building that fund up and starting to set aside the dollars in appropriations and build them up. Because you're not going to build a jail tomorrow. You're going to have a year of jail site selection and jail site, going through jail sites, and then you're going to go start working with an architect, and you're going to have to put some money aside to get that process going, and there's the hiring, the RFQ process and the hiring of an architect and a construction manager, and then you're going to get your real numbers together and start figure out, you're going to be into 2016 before you actually have to start thinking about selling bonds to do this. Look, starting today is a good time to start to think about how you're going to get the money together for that.
Sure.
Doesn't mean you got to do it all today. Just means you got to start thinking about it today and start working on putting the money aside for that project.
Where are we like the health department building selling in Garfield?
Well, that's going to come up tonight.
It is.
Might, yeah. I mean, we've got a lot to talk about tonight, but pavilions, they want us to, I think they want us to just let them have the building, and I'll go through it tonight where we are in the negotiations. And
Is there a doctor in the house?
I think it's really important to note that when I made the comment that the employees really did the work for us, those are dividends they're going to pay year in and year out. They did a lot of cuts. They did those 5% cuts that we were looking at to begin with. They already did that, and those budget cuts are going to continue on infinitum. And so that's really made our decisions a whole lot easier, that we don't have to go in and wholesale and say, okay, every department cut 5%. Well, we don't need to do that because they've done it. They're already there.
What if it's not enough, though? That's the point.
Well, but I think we're close, and this budget projections are telling you that you're close.
well, let me add, if these things come to pass, and the budget that I put in front of you, this 3-year budget summary, has these assumptions in it, that that TIF2 will end in 2016, that we're going to increase township CPO revenue by 2.5% until it gets to full funding with the funding that they agreed to, which is paying for the cost of the officers, and we pay for the cars and the indirect cost and all that. Revenue sharing, 911 surcharge, personal property tax, hold harmless for us, or the ballot proposal fails. Wage and benefit changes that we negotiated last year with the other groups being implemented with the current groups. Our fund balance assumptions are the same. Retirement has an improvement. Instead of going up by $250,000, it's going to go down a little bit. And register of deeds revenue improves because the economy and construction has been improving and her activity in her office has improved. If all those things come to pass, we can set more money aside for capital improvements in our 2015 budget. That's what it'll tell us. We can, check the ones that occurred and change the numbers to whichever way they were. What I'm getting from you is a direction. We want to build a jail. We want to make sure our capital improvements are funded properly.
We want 911.
We can start working on that. And we want 911 funded properly.
Yeah.
And, that's a decision that we're going to talk about that tonight as well, about 911 surcharge, whether we can add 42 cents by resolution of the board or not. And I really personally don't think that the Public Service Commission and the telcos are going to allow us to do that. They're going to say, nope, you can't do that. And we think that the legal argument is on our side. We're going to have to take them to court to get that. So, another way to do that is just to go to the voters and say, kick it up to $1.50 for us, and our 911 problems are solved.
Right.
$1.50.
Yeah, it's 147, I think, is the number that we decided was the right number to fund their capital and fund their operating, and not have any general fund appropriation any longer.
Dan?
Dave, one of the things, I'm glad that our retirement fund stuff is looking better, but still, that's a 20-year projection, am I correct? So things could go either way with that market. So still, I'm making the point to think, gosh, that's going to be good from now on. If that goes bad, we're in trouble.
Right. If it
So
drops,
that's
if the
why
market drops again, we're in trouble.
That's my point. That's why we still have to be really frugal.
Dan, it's only 12-year projection on retiree benefits. The 20 years is if we bonded for it.
Right.
But if we actually have to pay for it out of our general
years. Just
fund.
12 years?
It's only 12 years, and next year it goes to 10.
Yeah, I think so.
I think
feel
it goes
better
to
about
10 years.
that,
So it's
yeah, so-
it's a 10-year window
Okay.
that we're looking at. At the end of the 10 years, all that goes away.
We're all
I'd love that. So.
Because we're going to be fully funded, because also, we're not going to have any more retirees that are working for us at that point that are going to put money into it. And they're all going to be retired
Yeah.
in 10 years.
One thing that's not on here is our OPEB obligation.
Right, for the
We do have an
healthcare.
obligation for post-employment benefits that is not pre-funded and should be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably another $300,000 expense item that needs to be in our budget,
A year?
a year.
Okay, so I guess my point still stands.
Your point is taken.
Well, yeah,
You know, there are other
exactly.
things we can
And-
spend the
and there
money
are
on.
so
We can-
many- It's a moving target. Go ahead, Chris.
Dave, does any of our revenue sharing depend on whether or not we are funded in that particular area?
There's a proposal out there right now to, let me think if I can remember how it works.
Because it seems to
A
me
percentage
that
of the
There are
third.
four
They're divided into
criteria.
three pieces. Revenue sharing is going to be divided into three
Yeah.
pieces.
Right.
And 1/3 of it, a certain percentage of that 1/3 has got to be spent on your retirement obligations. I've suggested to Dina Bosworth at MAC that if we are a AA rated county, which we are, and we are setting aside our ARC every year, that they shouldn't put a restriction on us. If you're not, then they should. That's a good thing to earmark that. I mean, I don't like the state telling us what to do with money that they promised to give us a long time ago. But
Well,
I also
your point
think it's
is
a
well
great
taken
idea
there.
to be financially prudent. Some counties aren't doing that.
Okay, go ahead,
One
Charlie.
other question, Dave, on this OPEB thing. Is that an obligation, or do we just do that?
Well, it's an obligation that we have to pay. It's just like a pension obligation.
Is it by law?
You've promised
we
to
are
pay somebody's
obligated?
retiree health care, or a portion of it, in their retirement, and it's got to be frozen before you can, I mean, you have to fund it every year. It's an obligation you have until they die. And
So
so,
there's no room for negotiation or anything in that area?
there is.
There is no room?
Oh, sure.
Well, explain that part.
Okay, in this state, used to be that pensions were pretty much protected. It was unconstitutional to do anything to a retiree's pension. Not so sure with the Detroit experience right now. Bankruptcy may have an effect on that. But the courts have ruled that post-employment benefits, health insurance in your retirement, can be changed. There's no guarantee, there's no constitutional guarantee on it. So,
do we have a
right now,
potential-
ours is not really a big, we have a $100,000 set aside that we divide up between the number of retirees and use it to help subsidize their premiums. But with the police and command officers, the law enforcement, corrections, and command officers, they have retiree health care benefits, and we've agreed to fund those. Jen, can you help me out? Where are we at with that, as far as closing those plans? None are closed, or some are closed? Some are closed, yeah. Some are closed, not all of them. Some, not all.
So is that obligation about $6 million right now?
No, yeah, that's correct. That's the total accrued
50.
liability,
Okay.
yeah. But the annual number was somewhere, I think the general fund number was 300,
Total, all funds would be about 350.
yeah,
And we
about
do-
350 for all funds.
We're pretty much on a pay-as-you-go plan. We are paying some retirees those benefits. That, unlike the pension, we are not fully funding the annual required contribution because currently there's no hit or requirement to do that like there would be if we ignored our pension obligation. And that OPEB obligation is on the face, it's booked, it's on our government-wide financial statements. We fully disclose that liability and we fully report it. We're just not funding it on a actuarial basis.
Well, what was interesting was we had a $52 million bond proposal last year, or whenever it was this year. I don't even know what day it is.
It was.
We then
last
came
year.
back with another one that was $46 million. The difference was the OPEB, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct, yeah.
So why did you make the change there then, at that point?
Because two reasons. One is we thought it was cluttering up the analysis. And the second reason is that it's not completely closed.
Okay.
You know, we figured we'd bite that off with either a separate bond issue, or we would just fund it straight out. Right now, we're funding a portion of that, $300,000. It's whatever we're paying in direct costs annually for each retiree's benefit. We are not reserving money aside for the ones that are promised a benefit and for that future obligation.
Larry?
Just a footnote for Dave, with your administrators, and for Mac. And correct me if I'm wrong, but some 30 years ago, the state made an agreement with all counties that that we would be able to share in what they call revenue sharing from the gross amount of, I believe, the sales tax that they were collecting is where they got it from, in lieu of the state paying for court costs. The county would pay for the court costs. And so we need to remember, because there's the turnover in the legislature and the executive branch, we need to go back down there and reinforce what was originally agreed upon, why counties would get revenue sharing. And it was to offset the expense that we were paying for holding buildings and paying for staff for all the courts. And they have completely forgotten about that. And if you look at our $1.5 million, 30 years ago, courts cost $1.5 million. Now they cost, what, $3 million?
Yeah.
All right? So we need to go back and say, you know, the original agreement was the revenue sharing stayed flat and our costs went up, doubled. Okay? We're now paying $3 million for a $1.5 million obligation that you said would cover us for court costs. So I think that's part of the battle when we go down to Lansing and your administrators fight throughout the state with the legislature is that, hey, we agreed 30 years ago that we would accept $1.5 million in revenue sharing versus $1.5 million in costs for courts. Now it's $3 million for courts, and we still are getting only $1.5 million. And now you want to separate us, subdivide us, or perhaps drop us. I'd go back to them and say, you know, unless we get our $1.5 million, I think all the counties ought to go together and file a class action suit against the state and say, you pay for courts now, and we'll drop the revenue sharing, because you're in violation of our agreements that we put together 30 years ago.
Pretty good deal. Paid about $7 million for courts.
Yeah, so I think you got to remind them. I mean, that's got to be the pressure point.
The problem is the legislators that are seated at this point, half of them weren't born when that agreement was
Exactly.
negotiated.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's also why we need more county commissioners sitting in the state offices. Chris?
All righty. All that having been said, where do we go from here?
That's my next question.
And I think there are
Go ahead.
monies that we can save. I may be the only one who believes this, but if I am, I'll drop the subject. But mowing, I would like the county administrator to bid out mowing. I don't care if it's by building or by area, but I believe there's an opportunity to save on mowing. I can run a lawnmower, and if I can run a lawnmower, it's not really highly technical, because I'm not a high-techy person. And quit your laughing.
You can't bid any of that until the snow goes away, I can tell you that.
I understand that, but I think now is the time to have the discussion. That's why I'm bringing it up. And Herb, I want you to try and stay in your seat when I say this. I think that, that Community Collaborative, every single person in that room is paid. I do not believe that it's necessary for the county board to fund Community Collaborative. They can meet anyway. I think that's a savings. Originally, when we were talking about combining, combining building with soil erosion, there was supposed to be some cross-training there that would give us some, Dean's exact words were economies of scale. I don't believe that's occurred. If it has, I'm unaware of it. That is something that I think that perhaps we ought to take a second look at if we're not already doing that. And I've been made aware that there might be some additional savings. I'm just getting a little pieces of information in that department. So I will be meeting with the county administrator to talk about this within the next couple of weeks as his time permits. I'm fairly flexible.
Okay, Charlie?
Yeah, I love all this minutia stuff. Do we ever get a cost of what we paid them all? How can we make a decision going forward without knowing the number? It's on this list.
Well, that'd be the whole,
What do we pay for example, to cover our own payroll? And compare that to what could be done on the outside. But I think we need these numbers before we can decide we're going to mow. If there's no money mowing,
Yeah, well-
why would we look at it?
I'll tell you why. The reason I have this list here
Yeah.
is because I need to know what a majority of the board wants to do. Because it's going to take a lot of time and use a lot of resources to put this all together. You're going to put a lot of people to work measuring the circumference of the earth. And if nobody cares what the circumference of the earth really is, then it's a waste of time, right? So it would be a really good thing to take this list and go through it one by one, somebody make a motion and say, let's do that. Let's put somebody to work doing this and bring something back to us. And we'll do that. We'll bring you all the numbers, we'll bring you everything. But to go through it and try and scramble all over because somebody threw out an idea in the middle of the meeting is probably going to result in some wasted time.
Well,
Yeah,
I think
let's just
the
go
idea
through
was
this list.
to look at outsourcing in general,
Yeah.
but there's no sense looking at outsourcing where you're not spending any money. We've asked for these numbers for a couple months here.
Well, I don't have
For
the,
example, if we spend $10,000 mowing grass for this whole thing, and that's contained in that, I don't know if it's worth going after it. If we spend $150,000 doing this,
Oh, I see what you're
then I think we look at it.
I get
And I
it.
think we could prioritize based on what these are costing.
Oh, I see
okay,
what you're
so,
saying.
but if you look at our facilities staff, they mow a lot, they mow during the summer, a lot of things. But they also go over to the courthouse and fix the leaky water pipe, or they, rearrange furniture, or they paint walls, or they do whatever is needed to be done inside all of our county buildings.
So you're saying you can't break it out?
How do you
The,
narrow
the
it
question is if you outsource mowing, what are you going to eliminate
Right.
from that staff? And getting that honed down, getting that number for you is the difficult part. You understand?
Okay, I wouldn't necessarily be looking at removing staff. If I can save money, you could put a guy where else, you might need him someplace else. It's
But you
about
won't save any
saving
money that
on
way, so it'll be
on
just-
on that particular item. to
Don't
me.
eliminate staff, you don't save money.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to eliminate somebody.
So you're telling me if you could outsource and save $100,000, leave everything alone, you wouldn't save money?
Not unless you eliminate staff. If you spend $100,000, having it mowed and you haven't eliminated any staff, you're still paying the staff, plus
I
you're spending
understand if they all set
$100,000.
out, but there's a portion of that that has to be broken out. And we
Right.
could save money doing this outsourcing if it's the right item. But why go after something that's not that much money? I would look at the big ones.
I think, in that particular situation, it's whether or not we tell staff they would like you to look at the maintenance budget and make a determination whether or not there's a better way to do business.
Exactly.
So if everybody wants to go in that direction, it's not just that, should we contract out for mowing? It's, is there a better way to do the work that we're doing? And you tell staff that we would like you to spend some time with Danny Brown and Dave and Dean and all those, to be able to spend some time to look at that budget and find out if there's a better way to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to at least take quotes from, and say, okay, this is what we do. What would you charge us to do that? And then go back to your, this is, what I'm asking you for is not whether this makes sense or not. I think what I'm asking you for is, do you want us to spend the time looking at this particular thing? Because it's going to be done, and it's going to be added to everybody's list of things to do. And I think we want direction from the board that each one of these things is something you want to do, or it's, something that maybe one person wants to do, but the rest of the board's not interested in doing it. I take, for example, eliminate animal control, use the dollars for deputies. Before we spend a lot of time and effort going through that and trying to analyze how much it costs, I'd kind of like to know if everybody's on board with the whole concept.
So I think that's really important, but also I think it's, going after one building at a time to contract your mowing ain't going to cut it.
No.
I mean, because
I
you're
was
not
using it
eliminating
as an
somebody.
example.
Yeah, I know.
I was just using it as an example.
I'm just saying is that that's why I'm saying if everybody wants Dave and his department to spend time reviewing the maintenance budget, then we need a motion to be able to do that. Somebody want to make that motion?
Can we
No.
just,
Okay.
No.
I
Before we get
understand.
to it, I was talking to Dan, and basically, maintenance is their job, and they mow when
Is a
they're not
secondary.
busy doing maintenance.
Right.
So I don't see where you can save any money. He needs these people to do the plumbing, the heating, and whatever, and he just doesn't, when they're not busy doing that, they go out and mow. Now, he did say that there are probably some lawns that they could let out, but he did say not the Civic Center.
Yeah.
can we
Because
just go through,
they do so much maintenance there, even while they're mowing.
can we just go through this list and get just an idea, yes or no?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, you want to start at the top?
First
Yeah.
one if they want.
Equalization.
I don't have that.
It says that,
I have outsourcing
this is
payroll.
the budget review hearing notes that was presented at the meeting that Sonny chaired
I don't have that.
2 weeks ago.
Does everybody
I have-
have that up?
I have first one, cost of
You
outsourcing
have
payroll.
Can we use this to start with?
Can I comment on that then?
I do not have that.
Do you have our list?
All right, Dean, what?
Yeah, since you've asked for this, and I don't ignore the request, but Jen and I are very busy. We looked at this, the functions of outsourcing payroll, you'd primarily outsource what finance does. A basic payroll service for our situation is going to cost us about $30,000 a year based on 500-some checks. And the reason it's so costly is because we have about 65 checks that we process every 2 weeks that are manual checks. The bulk of the employees, it's, EFT, electronic deposit. We spend about $1,500 in-house in the finance department based on the time that we spend every 2 weeks. So you're talking, if we outsource the part of payroll that we can outsource, it would cost $30,000, and we would save $1,500 in staff time. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make sense to outsource payroll, because most of what we do, we'd have to do anyway. We're going to provide a file, a list of the employees with their amount of pay, and so there's no cost benefit to outsource the part
I
of
have a
payroll that
question.
we can.
Go ahead.
Dean, I'm not arguing with you. I mean, obviously, $30,000 versus $1,500. But one of the things you said caught my attention, and that is we issue manual checks. Why are we issuing manual checks to anyone?
Because in this state, you can't force a current employee who's been receiving a check to go to an electronic deposit. For new hires coming in, we can do that.
Really?
Correct.
It's illegal. You
Yep.
It's not
cannot
illegal.
require them to have a direct
The
deposit.
federal government can require Social Security recipients to
Yep.
do it, but by George, we can't in the state of Michigan.
That's the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
I can tell you, however, that Dean and I and Sarah Adams met with
Wayne?
PNC Bank to talk about a different way of doing accounts payable and purchasing, using a credit card rather than, and it's a pretty innovative thought. We're looking at it seriously. We're going to get them a file, and, we didn't need anybody to prompt us to do this. We just saw something in the marketplace that might apply to us, and
Wonderful.
we've been investigating it. So I think what you're missing is we do that all the time. And we did this without asking, and we did that without thinking. We just saw something that could possibly save him time, his staff time, and save us money, be a little bit more efficient for our vendors, and we're looking into it.
And we could use a Discover card and get cash back.
Actually, we would get a rebate.
I know.
It's a good deal. But, we're giving due diligence to it. It's not payroll, it's accounts payable, but it's getting rid of manual checks.
But speaking real quickly, I mean, over the years, working with human resources, the departments and IT, we have a very efficient, streamlined, automated payroll process. The employees, and what you can outsource, there's still a lot of work on the, that human resources does, and the accounting for that payroll is absolutely critical to what we do here for costing out on grants and to making sure that those employee costs are charged back to the budgets. You can't outsource that. You can only outsource, here's the file, process the check. There's not a lot there.
Well, and
You're
it's
going
not
to
like we're
retain.
not printing a whole bunch of other checks every 2 weeks also. If the only checks that we were cutting every 2 weeks was payroll, then you could look at payroll, but we have bills that we pay every 2 weeks.
Well, and we've gone to the pay statements. We used to print a pay stub. Everybody used to get a piece of paper. Now those are being sent to the employees electronically. We have really tried to be as efficient as we can in the payroll process. And the cost here to outsource it would be very high because of the number of manual checks that we're still providing
Dan?
to
I make the
employees.
motion that we leave payroll as it is.
I don't think we need to make a motion
Okay.
to leave it as it is. Let's make motions to
Drop
to
it from this
change,
list.
to make any changes.
Okay.
If we're not going to make any changes, we'll just go through
Well,
it.
how do you want to work this? Because we're going through item by item. Do we need a motion?
If you don't want to make any changes, we'll just leave it. If you want to make a change,
I make a
we'll go for
motion that we don't make any changes on payroll.
So, but I don't think we need to make a motion,
Well, how are we going to let him know that?
okay, because we're not
have to
doing
do it.
anything with it.
We're not going to take
Oh,
any
okay.
action.
So everything's still the
You just won't
status
take
quo.
any
If you
action
want to
on
make
it.
a change, then let's make a motion.
Okay,
Does that
gotcha.
work with everybody?
Fine.
Okay.
Okay. So bid out groundskeeping and lawn care by building.
I have one more question on payroll.
Okay, go
So are
ahead.
you telling me that we spend $30,000 a year to handle 500 people's payroll for the year?
No, if,
I'd want to know what the number is total. Or how many FTEs spend time on it, whatever, something.
I have one FTE that does payroll, but we only process payroll once every 2 weeks. The rest of the time, that employee is helping me with other finance functions.
So you'd call it a half a FTE?
It wouldn't even be a half of an
Probably
FTE, to be
How
honest
many
with you. The question
FTEs in
that-
HR?
Now, that's a
work
different
on this?
question. You asked me what it would cost to outsource payroll, and that's the numbers. I mean, if you want me to look at something else, I will look at
Dean,
that.
I don't want to tell anything, but I'd never asked that. I asked what we
It's-
paid to do it, not what it would
Well-
cost to outsource it.
To do all of payroll?
Yeah, payroll.
I'll have to get back with you on that.
Okay.
We have HR time involved. But
understand.
what does that information help us accomplish here?
What it helps me accomplish is if we spend a great deal of money on payroll, there are companies all over the world that specialize in payroll, and there might be something there to save the company
That's
some money.
absolutely correct, but they can't do some of the things that we're doing with our payroll processing.
Cost accounting was what creates that environment. So, anyway, other questions on payroll? Okay, next is bid out groundskeeping and lawn care for by building.
Well, I don't necessarily want to do it by building, but I have a hard time paying a plumber's wage to mow a lawn. I just have a hard time with that. And as Commissioner Rennie so eloquently said, and he was spot on, we need to know how much this is costing us. And so I would move to ask the administrator to take a look at the facilities budget for, what do you want to call it? Groundskeeping. And bring that number back to us so we can
I'll second that.
make a
Okay.
decision.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion on the motion? Okay, Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to analyze the cost of groundskeeping and basically determine whether, how much it will cost to outsource that or do it a different way. Find different ways of
It
doing it.
could be a different way.
But compare it to the current cost of providing that
Correct.
service.
Correct.
That's it.
That's good.
Okay?
Okay.
That is the motion.
That is the motion.
Is any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Wheelock.
Yes.
Thomas.
No.
Inman.
Yes.
Rennie.
Yes.
Lathrop.
Yes.
Lemkool.
No. Motion carries. So that's your first item, Dave.
Okay?
Next is eliminate animal control use of dollars for deputies. Anybody want to change that?
Nope.
No, I don't want
Okay.
to do it.
Next, determine if Commission on Aging second deputy director is necessary. Use dollars for client services. Urge COA to use large fund balance to reduce waiting lists.
Can I would like to comment on this before anybody thinks about making a motion on this. We had a brief discussion at the Commission on Aging's finance meeting, and we felt very strongly that at that meeting, and we're going to discuss it again at the executive committee, but we felt very strongly that this really ought to be a discussion between the director of the department and our county administrator. We just didn't feel that this, we're a policy board, and we just didn't feel staffing ought to be where we're going. That was just the finance committee's thing.
Okay.
So I know the director of Commission on Aging is on vacation. She's visiting her son in the Navy in Florida. Good timing. But when she gets back, I am assuming that she will be, if she has not already, contacting the administrator. So I just wanted to,
I can tell you they have requested to post the position.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's going to be filled yet.
that is correct.
Takes time to go through that process.
But we just felt that that was a department head and administrator job, not a board.
Everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is staffing, this type of staffing decisions are not this board's responsibility. This is something that David.
So we're all in
and staff-
agreement.
Yeah.
No
Cool.
motion, then, right?
All right. Next is soil erosion. Reduce clerical staff and use cross-training.
I will make that motion. I think we need to take a look at exactly what we're doing as far as permitting goes. I want to make sure that we're not, that, number one, we are cross-training, so that we can adjust for peaks and valleys in building, because everybody knows clearly that building is stronger usually in the spring than it is in February, for instance. And I also want to make sure that we are concentrating on soil erosion permits, not stormwater. This board has spoken very clearly that we ought not to be doing stormwater. And so I make that motion.
Clarification of the motion?
Sure.
Does that include reducing clerical staff or just doing the analysis?
I'm doing the analysis.
So we want to cross out reduce
I
clerical
would,
staff?
yes, I would like to ask the administrator to do an analysis of whether or not, first of all, there's an opportunity to use cross-training,
Okay.
and if there is an opportunity to reduce clerical staff.
All right.
So that's my motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. I think it's important to note that this is an enterprise fund and probably won't have any effect on any of our budgets.
Great.
It has an effect on taxpayers, though.
No,
They're paying the bill.
no, they're not. This is
Only
an
by
enterprise
fees.
fund. They pay with their fees.
So they pay by their fees. Go ahead, Sonny.
Yeah, the biggest thing is with your cross-training is to make sure that you have a separation of what portion of the FTE is being paid for by the building permit and what portion of it is by the soil erosion permit. That's going to be the hard part of trying to get some sort of analysis of what part of that is, because they are both enterprise fees, or enterprise funds, but they are two separate enterprise funds.
Soil erosion's not enterprise,
Right.
only
Right,
building.
right.
Okay. And there's a possibility that some of the permits that are being charged for at soil erosion are unnecessary. And that's a cost to us and a cost to our citizens. And so I think we should explore that.
Any other discussions, Charlie?
Honestly, with the soil erosion thing, I think we're getting into micromanaging from the board. Clerical staff, for sure, we shouldn't be involved in. As far as cross-training, I think we should get through our administrator, request that he talks to these soil erosion folks and see what they think about that cross-training and come back to us with what they think.
Okay.
So I will not support that motion.
Other discussion? Roll call vote.
Wheelock?
No.
Thomas?
Nope.
Inman?
No.
Rennie?
No.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Lemkool?
No. Motion fails.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that staff or the administrator meet with the department head and see whether there is some efficiencies that can be gained in that matter. But I don't believe it's this board's responsibility.
Second?
Okay,
What was
efficiencies.
the motion?
What do we do?
No, it's
It wasn't a
not
motion.
necessarily a motion. I would just a suggestion.
Just a
No,
suggestion?
just a suggestion that
All right.
the administrator meet with that department head. This is another
You're going to
staffing.
withdraw your support?
I was just trying to support Charlie on what his thought was.
This is another staffing situation.
All right,
and
okay.
staffing is not the responsibility of us unless we're changing the staffing plan. The staffing issues should be
That's fine.
dealt with between department head and county administrator.
I will check on it.
All right.
We got-
Next is eliminate 10,000 from community collaborative. First of all, community collaborative is not 10,000, it's only 5,500. And that pays for somebody to organize their meetings and make sure that everything is working together. It's not for the individual people that are already being employed. So I think it's really important to note that that collaborative does a tremendous amount of work. And then one of our meetings, we just found out that there is a human services coordinating plan that has to be implemented in order for us to get grants. And that came out of one of our meetings at Transportation from MDOT. So we're trying to figure out who's responsible to put that together. So Chris, I'll call on you.
I'm going to move to eliminate community collaborative funding.
Do I have support?
Discussion?
Okay. Do I have any other discussion? Larry?
Can you remind me of the, who the members are? Because I thought it was pretty broad-ranged and it,
This is
And
a
it- the cons-
dues-paying organization.
yeah, but how many, who's involved along with us paying to kick in? Is it a-
Goodwill, community, all the human services agencies in Grand Traverse County are members.
Okay? Is the city the member or any other governmental unit?
City's not a member.
Yeah, Ralph Safardini sits on that.
He's not a city employee. He sits on the board as Commission on Aging.
Okay, so he has a Commission on Aging. So because he sits on that, because the Commission on Aging is a dues-paying member through our dues paying by Grand Traverse County.
And the dividend for that 5,500 is the product that they put out? And if you could remind us of that, because you're more close to that than us.
Well, you know, we had a presentation here at our meeting, and they talked about all the things that they are currently doing with the community as a collaborative, and one of those things that they started the HelpLink office, which helps people to navigate through the system. They have brought organizations together to commingle funds so that you're not going to one agency and say, I need $500 for this person. They go together and say, well, if you come up with 100 for this agency, and you come up with 100, and you come up with 100, now we can come up with a 500, but it's not all out of one budget. So that collaboration is a way of doing business that's not normal in other communities.
Okay.
We are doing way more than most. There is, you go to Leelanau County and they talk about there's no wrong door. So if somebody comes to Department of Human Services, and they can't help them, but they know that they can get help by Goodwill or by Father Fred, then they can call them and they can get those things taken care of. This organizations brings those people together so they know who they are, how to call them, and what to do. It's just like us becoming part of MAC. It's kind of like us becoming part of NACO. Because you go to those meetings, the learning that you get is so valuable that when it comes time to solving problems, they're done collaboratively.
Okay.
So, Chris?
There is no other governmental agency that I'm aware of that funds this, and every single person in the room, this is my point, every single person in that room is a very highly paid, well-paid staff person.
And they all pay dues.
Yes. And I just, this is a group that is highly educated and can certainly meet on their own at the appointed time every single month without a county fund.
But then we would not have a voice. We would not be at the table. I just know that you would know your Michigan State Extension, your Commission on Aging,
Sheriff's
Health
Office.
Department?
the courts,
Health Department.
none of those organizations would be at the table. So there'd be no collaboration from
That's
the
right,
county.
we were paying the other department dues with this. Yeah, that's right, okay.
Dave?
This motion to eliminate the funding for the community collaborative, I would suggest that it be changed to, explore eliminating the funding for community collaborative, because you really need to give them the opportunity to present
I was
to you.
not, thank you. I will change that motion to explore, it because I don't want to cut them off this year.
Right.
I would not do that to anybody. We have already committed that money to them this year. But yes, I would amend my motion.
Yeah, and I would think any of
explore.
those things, we would ask those folks to come in and at least make their case before the final decision was made.
But we're not talking about this year anyway.
No, we're not.
Well, I would be friendly to that.
So you're the second, are you
I was the
willing to
second,
go with
yeah.
that?
I agree.
Very good. Okay, I'm going to call for a roll call vote, please.
Could you state the motion again?
To explore the possibility of eliminating the 5,500 to the community collaborative. It's not 10,000.
All right.
That's correct.
Roll call, please.
Thomas?
Yes.
Inman?
No.
Rennie?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Lemcool?
No. Motion carries. Next is a contract with Grand Terrace Bad. This has already been done.
We're working on this.
I received the information, and I passed it on to the tribal chairman, and Dave and the tribal chairman have had discussions, and they will be getting back to me.
Anything you can talk about or not yet?
In my conversation with the chairman, I think they were concerned. I think that it might just be more of an administrative issue than anything else.
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
It's something that needs to be cleared up. I think they were concerned, and he's going to get back with the chairman of our board.
I don't think they were aware of it, but they also have the separation between the courts and the tribal council, like we are separated from our courts and our commission.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to note that we are in that, the discussion's already been started, if that's okay with everybody. Mm-hmm. Okay? Next is discussed with judges the clerk's proposal to transfer filings and collections to Hall of Justice.
Move for approval.
That's fine.
Support.
Okay, I would like to add one more thing on this. I think it's important that we take the savings from the clerk's office and put it into her budget so that she can start doing document imaging.
That's fine.
So she figures about $200,000 total, and so if we put the $50,000 a year savings, now, one of the things you might want to look at is telling Dave that we would like to see this document imaging done this year, but we will pay for it for the next 3 years out of the budget savings. That's just my thought, so that we can get some of this stuff. When they had the water damage down there, her blood turn to water, because there's some huge records that are down there that they need on a regular basis. And if we could get that done, we could eliminate some storage. So that's only my recommendation to add to that motion, if you don't mind.
I have no problem, is the second for using the savings for document imaging. As far as authorizing that expenditure in the 2014 year, I'd like to have an estimate or a proposal for that.
That's fine.
You know, I don't want to just say,
Well,
yeah,
I'm not
we'll do
gonna
it
say
this year.
I agree.
You know,
I agree.
I would like to see a proposal to do that, because I'm assuming that's going to be a contracted service.
Okay?
I got a question.
Yes.
Okay.
But we still have to save the money from the clerk, I'm sorry.
I was
Right.
going to say, that's what I was just going to
We have to be able to
say.
save the money, but the savings would be gone toward document
We have to
imaging.
establish the savings.
Yeah, the judges
No.
have to agree.
Chris?
That's all I was going to say, is do we actually have to have the savings
Right.
agreed to
Right.
between the judges
Right.
and the clerk?
But I think that's the carrot that's going to make them want to be able to do it. Okay? Anybody else got a comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Next, more office space for prosecuting office. Work
Motion
release
to-
facility building, do we do a connection? Do we want to work on that?
I would like to make a motion that, that the staff work with the prosecutor on developing a plan to do something different with the current office space as it currently exists.
I'll support the motion.
Okay, I have a motion and support. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Sonny.
Well, I think I will support the motion because it says to identify different meet the spatial needs of the prosecutor's office. I would never support moving anyone into that work release facility.
No.
The building is not conducive for any of that.
Well, the minute we do, we're in trouble, we're
Along with-
overcrowded.
Oh, well, there's a whole lot of issues when we talk about doing anything with that building. I'm not sure Department of Corrections is going to give us our newer inspection with it the way it is, because it's been sitting vacant for almost a year, so.
It'd be a punishment to put anyone in that building.
But the point is, I do believe the prosecutor needs additional space, but I believe we can identify that space without having to talk about that specific building.
Right. Yeah, and that was not included in my motion, so.
So is that in the motion, or that is not?
No, that's
Is
not
to
in the-
identify more office space for the prosecutor.
Okay.
We cross out that portion that's in the
The
parentheses.
work release building is out, okay? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Next is set aside funds for jail. Assemble citizen committee to review potential for new jail.
So moved.
I second.
Any other discussion? Chris?
Set aside funds, what exactly does that
I
mean?
know.
I mean, come on, folks, we're going to have to make some cuts here if we're setting aside funds.
Administrator will tell us.
We're going to, I guess in my thought, we're going to establish a fund to deal with building the new jail.
You know, I mean, a box of money isn't going to fall out of the sky.
Well,
At
you
least-
never know. And as far as the Assemble Citizens Committee, I have added to tonight's agenda under unfinished business to move forward with the appointment of that Citizens Committee. I don't believe that it's appropriate for us to sit on our hands for the next 5 months before the National Institute of Corrections opportunity comes to us in August, so I'd like to, and we will have that discussion in tonight's meeting, because I have penciled it in on the unfinished business, because I would like to not sit on our hands for 5 months, but move forward with, the siting of the jail. If we've established that we need a new jail, we need to establish where we're going to put it. There's no reasons for us to wait till we have the final design for that facility to start that process.
So instead of doing a motion in this situation, wouldn't we be better off saying we're already in the process of doing this?
I'd rather have the
I
motion.
mean, we're not setting aside funds.
See, that's the part that
That's the thing
I'm,
I'm having a problem with.
I mean, if we're going to say set aside funds, then I think we need to be a little bit more specific as far as, I mean,
Amount.
what we're looking at from our administrator. I mean, he's not, I mean, he's certainly not
Have an
clairvoyant.
extra room in the basement where we start printing money.
I just think that that's too general.
Dan?
I think we should say that. We're not being specific. Let him come up with something. He's smart. I don't mean maybe, we need a new jail. And we have to start setting aside funds, and he can put it in his graph. And it'll also make us take this more seriously right now. So I hate to disagree with Christine.
Oh,
but-
go ahead.
But I think we should,
It
we're not
doesn't
saying how
bother me
much. It could be $1. But anyway, yeah, let's set aside some
Larry.
funds.
Here's my perspective on the second part of the motion, is that to assemble citizens to review a potential new jail, to me, if I was on that Citizens Advisory Committee, I would want a full report coming back before I start that process from you guys going out to Colorado. Because I want to know the full, I want to know the full process.
I'd like
that we would have to go
I'd like to have
through.
that discussion tonight, please.
But that's why I have a concern about the motion, is that if I was a citizens committee, we can start the process of trying to identify who would want to sit on that committee, but in terms of having them actually meet, I think their first meeting is when you guys get back and you give them a presentation of what occurred at that training session and what the results of your work sessions were, and then you give a report to them, and then you let them go.
Dan?
Whatever we do with this new citizens meeting, I sure hope that we take advantage of our past blue ribbon studies and put some of those people, because we don't need to redo all that work. And setting up a new committee, you know, do we really need a jail? That's been decided. And how big it is going to be, it's been decided. And that kind of stuff. So I don't know how it relates to this motion, but I think we need to make use of the tremendous resource of the past Blue Ribbon Committee, and even those people, if they're willing and able to come back.
Just remember, they're all 10 years older.
So that means they're smarter.
Dave, you had your,
Yeah, the National Institute of Corrections is going to send a contingent out here, a transition team or something, I can't remember what the name of the team is, but they're going to send a team of experts out to us before we go to the pony program in August. They're going to be looking at the jail, they're going to be talking to the judges, they're going to be talking to the sheriff. The sheriff has an instrumental part in this, because the NIC really is working for law enforcement, or the people who run the jails. And you kind of, it's really good information, but you got to remember they're really kind of watching out. They work for the sheriff. And so he's going to write a letter to them, or he should write a letter to them. They're going to request one. And then they're going to send out a team to work with us, and they're going to look at all the work of the Blue Ribbon Committee. They're going to review the need for the jail. They're going to review the size, the jail population projections and needs of the jail. And then they're going to have that information. We're going to see those people again at the pony program. They're going to give us specific things for our situation. So in the meantime, I don't think it's a bad thing to think about appointing a committee to look at the jail site and look at the results of the data that is collected, the new data, just to verify that 250 is still the number. I have a feeling you're going to find out it's more like 300 now. But to make those determinations and get the criteria together, because in order to find the right site, you got to know how big. And you got to know who's going to be there. If law enforcement's going to be there, or if law enforcement's going to stay at Woodmere. You got to know the answer to that question before you decide to hire an architect to build something. So all those questions are going to have to be reviewed and answered. And we can do that. We can start that process this summer. And as far as setting aside funds, you can leave it blank. I'm telling you right now that in order to start the site selection process, you're going to want a facilitator from outside the county to run the site selection process. You're going to have some help from the inside, but it's probably going to be $25,000, $30,000. Maybe more, I don't know. But that, we spent $25,000, and I think we got a heck of a cheap deal because the architect wanted to do the jail, that bid on that. But, you really want to get somebody who knows how to do it. And so, 2014, if we decide we're going to appoint a committee, you're going to see a agenda item from me that says, I think we need to take $30,000 out of contingency or somewhere to finance, this, and and start the RFP process to get somebody hired to shepherd this committee.
So they-
And then in the 2015 budget, I will set aside funds, as much as I can, more than $1,
You know, I
to get
would-
projects started.
I would like to, you know, if the second is acceptable, I would like to strike the portion about the Citizens Committee, because I believe that's an agenda item for tonight, and just identify that we want the administrator to start the process to identify funding for the county, for a new county jail.
All right, good, I'm good with that.
Is that satisfactory with the
It's just-
second?
It'll just say
I was
identify
the second.
Okay,
funding.
all right.
I'm agreeable.
Everybody understand the motion?
Yep.
Chris?
You know, I agree with the concept of the motion, but I don't think it is specific enough, and for that reason, I'm going to be voting no. But it's not because I don't support looking at and moving forward with a new jail. I just think that
There's a lot of different things that we have to look at before we can identify what the dollar amount is going to be and all of those kind of things. We have to start the process somewhere. This is where we start the process.
All right.
We start the process.
You convinced me.
We start the process with identifying the need and identifying, and then we absolutely believe there's a need, and then we're going to start the process toward identifying how we're going to fund it. That's the piece that we're talking about today. And then tonight, we're going to talk about the process that we have to go through to try to figure out where we're going to build it. That can be done completely separate from the actual design and construction of the jail. Because once we've identified a 10-acre parcel or whatever the situation's going to be, it doesn't matter whether the jail's going to be direct supervision, podule, or how it's going to be. This is the geographic size of the facility that we're going to need, and that's the piece that we can get started with now, is moving forward.
You made the sale.
With the designating the site.
Dan?
I want to put it for the record, this is a historic moment. I think it's never happened before where Sonny convinced Steve.
Historic moment.
It's a historic moment.
Yeah, well, I just want to make the comment that what you're telling, when you do this motion, is that you're telling him to put it in the budget for next year.
Yeah.
And then you,
Yeah.
as commissioners, when we do next year's budget, you're also telling yourself, this is what you're going to put in your budget.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is putting your hand to the fires
Yeah.
when you start to do the policies of what the board should be.
We don't mean maybe, we need a new jail.
And if we
Okay,
don't-
I'm going to call,
if we don't get that far, we don't spend it.
that's right. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of the vote, of this setting aside funds for the jail, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Investigate a regional jail. I think Dave
Done
has
deal.
done some of that kind of stuff.
Doesn't
I
have
don't think we're
legs.
going to go there.
Nope.
We,
Okay?
I'll just throw one thing out about that. We've got one county in our neighborhood that could use new jail, is Wexford. The problem is Traverse City's on the north end of our county.
Yep.
Their county seat is on the south end of their county, and we'd have tremendous labor costs moving people back and forth, wherever you put it.
If they
Unless it's
wanted to
here.
be, if they wanted to be part of our jail, they can come in and ask us to be part of that. If they want to be part of that jail study.
Or
That's
we
right.
can make jail beds available on a contract basis.
Right.
That's the way we do it
Exactly.
in Michigan.
Where, in Michigan, what happens, I don't know of any regional jails that have actually worked. Not only in Michigan, but pretty much throughout the country. But what does happen is communities build jails that have adequate capacity, and other communities contract them. That's what we're doing. We're paying Leelanau County every day right now.
Right.
You know?
Cheaper than-
Okay, next is set up a CIP fund and revise the 5-year plan.
I think we have a CIP fund, and, as far as the revision of the 5-year plan, I think that's an ongoing thing that Danny Brown is working on anyway as part of his normal maintenance situation.
Yeah, Danny has his piece, and I've already spoken with John Syke about coming forward to kind of review the old plan and talk to you about, where we're going in the future. So
Well, and we
if you
talked
wanna-
about during this process that we do have a capital improvement committee that's appointed. John Sykes on it, Danny Brown's on it, I was on it. And, we haven't met for a couple of years because we haven't really had an issue, but that doesn't mean that we can't, come together and review that all of these things are still in mind, but Danny's got to do his part first.
Do we need a motion?
Does this include doing the technology?
No, it doesn't. I don't
really
think that
feel
had a
we should-
technology piece to it.
We should add the technology piece to this. That it's not
You
just
really-
facilities.
You really do plan on setting up a printing press in the basement, don't you?
Do I have a motion?
All right. I will move to set up a capital improvement fund and revise the 5-year plan. We have to do it. We have got to look at it in some way, shape, or form.
Can you add the technology piece to that motion,
Yes.
please?
As painful as it is for me to do
Okay.
that, because
Do I have
it's so
support?
expensive.
Dan?
I'll second it.
I have support. Any other discussion? Sonny?
Could I suggest that the motion reads to set up the 5-year, or the CIP fund and revise the 5-year plan for facilities and technologies?
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
good.
I like that better.
Because we already had the CIP fund.
The CIP fund is all there, but we've never taken technology into it.
I like that better. I don't know how we're,
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried. Next is reduce park and recreation clerical staff.
I would like to follow the same path that we did when we were talking about Commission on Aging. I really think that this is a discussion that needs to be had between our administrator and our department head. If the administrator thinks that clerks are mushrooming, then he's going to obviously bring it back to us in a budget and a suggestion. So I'm going to suggest that we follow the same path.
Yep, I like it.
So I think all three of these, reduce parks, consider Peninsula Township, raise pool fees, are all
Well,
part of Parks and Recreation.
I'm going to get to the other two because they're on tomorrow night's agenda when we get to those. But I'm just suggesting that we,
Staffing issues are an administrator's
I really think,
We shouldn't be
Just
doing it.
shouldn't be there. Period.
Okay, so administrative staff, everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah, when I said this, I don't necessarily mean reduce clerical staff. I think money can be saved in parks. I'm hoping between 30 and 40,000 bucks. I don't think we need to be spending that much money. So whoever wants to handle it, I'd like to see it looked at more closely.
But that's a Parks and Recreation issue.
Well, now, wait. We went through 3 months of having people talk to us, and if we just hand this off to Parks and Recreation, it's just like saying, who would like to take a decrease in their staff? Nobody wants to. So I'd like to put a little more teeth in it than this. I want it looked at and reported back to us and not just fluffed off.
well,
Thanks. Again, we do not belong in these minutia situations with different departments. on
Then why
this
do we
board.
listen to the report then?
Well, I've been asking that for months, Dan.
Yeah, so,
And
I
so
mean-
has some other people said we haven't saved too much. The point is, it's got to go through the right channels. Then you look at it. This board does not belong in someone's office. We don't know what the hell's going on in that office.
I'm not saying that I looked at what's going on in the office, and I'm not just saying how it should change. I just think there's money there to be saved.
Well, then I think we convey that to our administrator and say, here's an area you might look at.
And I'd like to see a real serious look at it and a real serious report back.
I hope he takes you seriously.
Okay.
Is there a motion, or is there any more information you want to do on that?
Nope.
Okay. Consider Peninsula Township taking over operation of Power Isle. Chris?
the Parks Board has, believe it or not, in 2 meetings, got a completely new strategic plan. One of the things that we are going to talk about is is Power Island. It's not necessarily Peninsula
Right.
Township, but it's Power Island. We are going to take a look at the administrator's suggestion as to whether or not we just let that island go back to its natural state. The Parks Board is going to look at that. So I wanted to speak to that issue, and also just to let you know, the pool fees are on tomorrow evening's agenda.
Okay, that takes care of both those.
Sonny.
That's done, right?
Mr. Chairman, these issues, the Power Island issue, the pool fees issue, are responsibilities of the Parks and Recreation Commission. If you look at their responsibilities as outlined by their board, their bylaws and everything else, these are not an issue for this board. These are an issue for the Parks and Recreation Commission. It's their responsibility. When they're appointed for this job, let them do their job.
Well,
Dan?
Well, you know, I think you're probably right, but there's still some room in there for talk, because I talked to the president of the Parks Board just this morning, and she felt that some of this stuff was our decision. So we need to clear that up, because not everyone on that board thinks the way you think, Sonny. They think that some of this is our decision.
So, Chris?
well, I want to reiterate again that we are going to look at this, and I would disagree a little bit, Sonny, in that some of these ideas, for instance, the Peninsula Township taking a look at Peninsula Township, selling it or leasing it or whatever, Power Island to them, I think it's a thought that was outside the box, and it came from this board. I know Commissioner Inman mentioned something about the state of Michigan, DNR, maybe having the Parks Board look at that. But these were good ideas, and they came out of our discussion. There's nothing wrong with those ideas going to the Parks Board, and that's where they sit right now.
But they go to the Parks Board.
And
They're
they
not-
are.
They're not for discussion here.
They're going to the Parks Board.
Okay, is everybody comfortable with
Talk
that?
about Gilbert Park, too.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah, I'll tell you that I talked with people at the Peninsula, and I think they would do a much better job with Power Island than we do.
So,
I think they have the resources, and they would take it more seriously, and they would make that park flourish.
let's find out what the Parks Board is going to be doing in the future, and if we're not comfortable with the direction, then we can always go back and tell them to do something different.
Yeah,
Well, next it to
Okay.
Peninsula Township.
So,
that's what I'd like to do.
It probably is anyway.
It's actually.
I think it's interesting to note that on our meeting tonight, we have a proposal for a $100,000 match out of our county funds, and whether or not that would be one of those things that we could go back and say, if you want to do this at Maple Bay Park, you take it out of your budgets. So that's how we provide that kind of direction.
I believe that that's a
Amen.
fine statement, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Going forward, increase domestic referee salary to be equal to assistant prosecuting attorney's classification study.
No.
We're gonna need, I think we need the whole classification, like we have always said. We're not gonna just hit one, we're just gonna, we need to do the study and then treat everyone equally, so.
So do you want to do something with classification, Sonny?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we put together some version of a classification plan. We've ignored this item for way too long. I'm not saying that we've got to go out and spend $50,000 to have some company come in and do a plan that ends up in a white notebook hanging on a shelf. But we absolutely have to do something about our classification and salary study. But the problem is when we commit to do this study, the other piece of that is we have to commit to implement it. This is what happened the last time. We did the study, whether it was flawed, whether it wasn't flawed, there's a million different things you could have the discussion about. But the fact was, we told the employees we were going to implement the study over 3 years, and we backed out and we didn't do it. And there's still a lot of hard feelings over that. And, one of the problems that we're going to find, I don't care what classification study we do, we're going to find that there are positions in our county that are significantly underpaid. The problem is they are a minority of our positions. So we're going to find, at least in the last 2 times that we've been through this thing that I can remember, 80% of the money goes to 15% of the people.
Okay, Charlie?
When we did our strategic plan, we talked at length about doing this study. And I think it would do a great deal to put more confidence, if you will, maybe help the morale of the employees of this county if we followed through on something like that.
Make a
We've been
motion.
talking about it for months.
I made the motion that we proceed with a classification study.
I second it.
Okay, that is not increasing the referee's salary. This is just for the classification study.
Classification study.
I still, there are two things. First, Mr. Chairman, after my statement momentarily, I have to leave to pick up my husband at the airport at 5 o'clock, so, but I'm allowing...
Trying to get us done before 5.
But I'm allowing for baggage handling. I still believe that when you have a position and you have an opening and you have 100 people applying for that job, that tells me that that classification and that pay grade is just swell. When you have a classification, for instance, an equalization director that they're very hard to come by and you can't find a qualified applicant, then you're not paying enough. To me, that is a wage and salary classification study, and that's what we ought to use. So I will not be supporting this motion, and then I'm getting up and leaving.
See, Larry.
Just a friendly cleanup is that maybe the motion should be to direct the administrator and the Director of Human Resources to report back to the board on a recommendation of how they would like to approach a new classification plan.
That's fine.
All right.
Is there a second on that motion? I mean, is that...
Yeah, that's fine. I changed the motion to direct staff, the administrator and HR director, to come back with a plan for a classification
I
study.
would second that modified.
Okay, and that's a second?
Yes.
Okay. How you doing on motions there, Sarah? Okay.
Sarah's good. She's
All
got
those
it.
in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. I will be
Motion's
back.
carried.
I will be back for the 6 o'clock meeting.
Okay. Looking for potential raising 911 surcharge. I think that's on our agenda for tonight.
Good.
So that's already being done. And
Any way we
investigate
can
potential
do it.
construction codes ability to receive electronic submissions.
I think
No.
that's an issue that we have to deal with, that we could direct staff to look at, but it's certainly not something we're going to be able to do from here.
No.
You know, this is an issue that staff has to look at, and the IT department has to be involved in, whether or not we can electronically take those plans.
Okay.
I know
Anybody-
I get 90% of the blueprints I get anymore come to me electronically. I never see sheets.
Right.
Never
Okay.
see papers anymore.
Anybody have anything against that? Everybody under control?
Yep.
Is there anything else that needs to be brought before this budget hearing meeting?
Cat
Anything that we did not cover?
Cat licenses.
Make a motion.
Adjourn?
Motion? Do we- No, we
No,
can't.
no,
We gotta
it's
not-
cat
We
license.
got to have a second public comment.
Okay. Administration, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, that was fantastic.
Okay?
You're looking for a revenue source.
Everybody under control?
Yep.
We don't have any
Yeah.
public for public comment, so we are adjourned.
Good.
Good.
Just in time.